A straight bitumen road cuts through red sand, spinifex clumps, and low acacia scrub. From the window of a vehicle, the horizon stays flat and unbroken for 300 kilometers in every direction. There are no ridges, no rivers, and no towns. The satellite data shows an anomaly 90 meters beneath the wheels. For decades, geologists treated these inland basins as ancient, uniform, and entirely inert. Official survey sheets recorded only shallow sand sheets and standard Cretaceous sediment, mapped in passing by survey teams who assumed nothing complex lay beneath the flat surface. What processes shaped this continent in places where the surface shows absolutely nothing? Across 20 sites, we examine locations that contradict every expectation of the landscape above them. Number 20. The desert oasis fed by ancient rain. Travel east of Alice Springs into the dry bed of the Finke River in the Northern Territory, where average annual rainfall sits well below 250 millimeters. The surrounding country is red sandstone and spinifex. Then the gorge walls narrow at Palm Valley, inside Finke Gorge National Park, and the desert floor opens into permanent spring pools shaded by thousands of mature red cabbage palms. These palms, Livistona marrii, grow naturally nowhere else on the continent. For generations, botanical surveys classified the population as a stranded relict of rainforests that covered Central Australia 15 million years ago during the Miocene. Genetic sequencing conducted by researchers from the University of Tasmania in 2012 revised that timeline entirely, showing that the Palm Valley population diverged from northern relatives only about 15,000 years ago. The water sustaining them surfaces from deep sandstone fissures. Rain that fell on the McDonnell Ranges thousands of years ago filtered downward through jointed sandstone, traveling along subsurface fault structures under gravity before discharging into the canyon floor at a constant temperature year-round. It is an active hydrological system running beneath ground that looks completely arid on the surface. Number 19. The sinkhole beneath the pine forest. In the southeast of South Australia, 5 kilometers south of Mount Gambier, the surface landscape consists of commercial radiata pine plantations and dairy pasture. In 1969, an opening in the limestone near a forestry track was explored by cave divers. This is the shaft sinkhole. The surface entrance is a narrow hole barely 1 meter across, dropped through pasture soil. Directly beneath that opening, the void bells out into a massive, water-filled subterranean chamber. The water drops 50 meters into darkness, where the chamber expands to a width of over 140 meters, with secondary shafts dropping past 80 meters depth. The site is part of the Gambier limestone karst system, formed when acidic groundwater dissolved porous tertiary limestone from below. It is also one of the most perilous freshwater dive locations in the Southern Hemisphere. In May 1973, 4 recreational divers drowned in a single decompression accident when they exceeded planned depths in the lower chamber. Following the fatalities, the South Australian government closed the site, later establishing a specialised permit framework managed through the Cave Divers Association of Australia. Number 18. The inland lake drowned by sand and salt. In the arid northeast of South Australia sits Catithander Lake Eyre, a salt basin covering 9,690 square kilometres, sitting 15 metres below sea level at its lowest point. For years at a time, the surface is a dry crust of sodium chloride and gypsum stretching flat to the sky. The basin is the terminus of an internal drainage system covering 1.2 million square kilometres, roughly 1/6 of the continent. Rivers like the Diamantina and Cooper Creek rise thousands of kilometres north in tropical Queensland. When monsoon rains cross northern catchments, the water takes months to navigate the braided channels of the Channel Country. When floodwaters arrive, the dry white basin converts into an immense inland sea, triggering breeding colonies of Australian pelicans and banded stilts that travel hundreds of kilometres inland to nest. The water does not drain to the ocean. It leaves solely through evaporation under the desert sun, depositing mineral salts and returning the lakebed to white crust until the next northern monsoon. Number 17. The subterranean cave roost of the Nullarbor. Underneath the flat, treeless expanse of the Nullarbor Plain in Western Australia, the surface shows only low bluebush and calcareous limestone soil. Near the edge of the Roe Plains, vertical breakdown collapses reveal cavern mouths opening into extensive underground karst networks, including the Cocklebiddy Cave system. Cocklebiddy Cave features a subterranean tunnel system extending more than 6 kilometers beneath the limestone surface, almost entirely submerged beneath clear, alkaline groundwater. The entrance sinkhole provides a sheltered microclimate where tens of thousands of southern bentwing bats and cave swallows seek refuge from extreme temperatures on the open plain above. The cave passages follow horizontal bedding planes dissolved out of Wilson Bluff limestone during wetter climatic periods in the Pliocene. Below the arid desert, divers have pushed through giant water-filled chambers, including the massive Toad Hall chamber, proving that the world beneath the plain contains one of the largest continuous cave networks on Earth. Number 16. The collapsed karst grotto of the Eastern Ranges. In the upper reaches of the Shoalhaven River catchment in southern New South Wales, the surface presents as dense eucalyptus woodland over fractured limestone ridges. Near Bungonia, the ground drops into a sheer gorge over 300 meters deep, where surface creeks disappear into limestone swallow holes. This is the Bungonia Cave Network. The surface gorge is an unroofed cavern system. Over several million years during the Tertiary, underground streams dissolved horizontal conduits through the late Silurian Bungonia limestone. As regional uplift elevated the southern tablelands, the water table dropped, draining the upper conduits. Deprived of hydrostatic support, the limestone roofs fractured along vertical joints and collapsed into the empty chambers below, transforming a subterranean river passage into Bungonia Slot Gorge. Beneath the dry gorge floor, subterranean drainage continues today through the Drum Cave and Odyssey Cave systems, dropping more than 200 meters through vertical vadose shafts to reach active streams that resurge downstream at the Shoalhaven River. Number 15. The ancient ocean reef raised into mountain ranges. In the Kimberley region of Western Australia, flat spinifex plains are abruptly interrupted by the Napier and Oscar ranges, limestone ramparts rising up to 100 meters above the surrounding red alluvium. They run in an unbroken wall for 350 kilometers. These ranges are not tectonic fold mountains. They are an exhumed barrier reef system constructed roughly 375 million years ago during the late Devonian. At that time, a warm, shallow sea covered the Canning Basin. Stromatoporoids, algae, and ancient coral-like organisms built a massive limestone reef complex along the edge of the submerged Kimberley landmass. When the Devonian Sea withdrew, the basin filled with mudstone and sandstone, burying the barrier beneath hundreds of meters of sediment. Over millions of years of subaerial weathering, rain and wind stripped away the weaker cover rocks, leaving the dense reef limestone standing high above the plains as an intact fossilized seascape. At Winjana Gorge, the Leonard River cuts across this barrier, exposing cross-sections of the reef core and fossilized beds of goniatites and stromatoporoids embedded in the cliff faces. Number 14. The groaning granite monoliths of the interior. In southwestern Western Australia, south of Hayden, the undulating sandplain is dominated by large, bare granite inselbergs. The most prominent is Wave Rock, a curving granite cliff face 15 meters high and 110 meters long, resembling an ocean wave about to break. The granite crystallized deep within the Earth's crust roughly 2.6 billion years ago as part of the Yilgarn Craton, one of the oldest stable pieces of continental crust on the planet. During the Cretaceous and Tertiary, when the climate was humid, chemical weathering by acidic groundwater concentrated along the base of the subsurface granite, rotting feldspar minerals into soft kaolin clay while leaving the upper surface intact. Subsequent regional erosion stripped away the weathered soil mantle, exposing the flared, concave granite slope. During hot summer days, the outer rock shell expands under direct solar radiation, reaching over 45 degrees Celsius. When temperatures drop rapidly after sunset, contraction across exfoliation sheets causes the granite to release mechanical stress in audible cracks and settling sounds across the quiet plain. Number 13. The moving sandfield over ancient drainage lines. In the Great Victoria Desert of eastern Western Australia and western South Australia, parallel longitudinal dunes stretch across hundreds of kilometers. The dunes rise between 10 and 25 meters high, running directly across the underlying regional geology. Geoscientific mapping by Geoscience Australia, using airborne radiometric and satellite elevation data, revealed that beneath this active Aeolian sand cover lie immense paleochannels, ancient river courses tens of kilometers wide that carried runoff across the continent during the Paleogene and Neogene. As the continent drifted north into the dry, mid-latitude high-pressure belt over the last 20 million years, these river channels dried out entirely. During hyper-arid phases of Quaternary glacial cycles, prevailing anticyclonic winds reworked exposed alluvial quartz sediments into continuous east-west dune fields, entirely masking the ancient hydrological networks that still hold deep saline groundwater below the sand. What happens when an ancient landscape is preserved in isolation by deliberate boundary lines? Number 12. The continental coordinate shift. Australia sits on one of the fastest-moving tectonic plates on Earth, the Australian plate, drifting north-northeast toward the Pacific plate at approximately 7 centimeters per year. For decades, land titles and local maps relied on the geocentric datum of Australia, 1994, which fixed coordinates to surface physical benchmarks measured at that time. By 2016, satellite positioning using global navigation satellite systems had accumulated a discrepancy of more than 1.5 meters between actual satellite coordinates and local map sheets. To prevent navigation and cadastral systems from drifting out of alignment, Geoscience Australia implemented the Geocentric Datum of Australia 2020, officially recalculating national coordinates 1.8 meters to the northeast to match satellite orbit data. The land had moved. The maps were corrected to catch up. Number 11. The buried impact structure of the outback. In southwestern Queensland, near Eromanga, the surface is flat Cretaceous rolling downs country. In 1981, while evaluating seismic reflection profiles and drill cores for petroleum exploration, geologists from the Bureau of Mineral Resources identified an anomalous structural disturbance beneath the sediment. This is the Tukanuka crater. The structure has a diameter of roughly 66 kilometers, buried entirely under several hundred meters of Eromanga Basin sedimentary rocks. Diamond drill cores recovered from the central uplift revealed planar deformation features in quartz grains and shatter cones, diagnostic physical proof of shock metamorphism caused by a hypervelocity meteorite impact roughly 125 million years ago during the early Cretaceous. At the surface, not a single ridge indicates its presence. Number 10. The surveyed border offset in the desert. Between South Australia and New South Wales, the official border was defined in 1836 as the 141st meridian of east longitude. Between 1868 and 1870, surveyors Edward Boyce and William Cameron surveyed and marked the boundary on the ground using transit theodolites and astronomical observations. Because of slight clock errors and optical limitations in measuring stellar transits, Cameron and Boyce placed the surveyed boundary roughly 130 meters west of the true astronomical meridian across a length of several hundred kilometers. New South Wales recognized the marked ground line, while South Australia claimed the true meridian. The resulting territorial dispute reached the High Court of Australia in 1911 and the Privy Council in 1914, both ruling that the physically marked line on the ground was the permanent legal state boundary. Number 9. The engineering landmark built for inland stock routes. In the mid-19th century, moving livestock across the Murrumbidgee River at Gundagai in southern New South Wales was frequently disrupted by severe river flooding. Between 1900 and 1902, the New South Wales Department of Public Works designed and erected the Prince Alfred Bridge timber viaduct. Spanning more than 800 metres across the alluvial floodplain, the side spans were constructed from local ironbark timber trusses, engineered to carry heavy stock and wagon traffic above the highest recorded flood levels. It stood as one of the longest timber truss viaducts constructed in the Southern Hemisphere, an engineered transit corridor built across flood-prone river flats that allowed the continuous development of regional pastoral trade. What happens when an entire landscape is permanently altered by industrial decisions whose physical scars remain active in the earth? Number 8. The buried mineral deposit found without surface outcrop. In northern South Australia, 560 kilometres north of Adelaide, the Stuart Shelf is a flat, semi-arid tableland of red soil and gibberstones. In 1975, exploration geologists with Western Mining Corporation drilled a gravity and magnetic anomaly that showed no surface mineralization whatsoever. That core hole struck Olympic Dam. Beneath 350 meters of flat Cretaceous and Cambrian sedimentary cover sits one of the largest iron oxide copper-gold deposits on the planet, containing substantial reserves of copper, uranium, gold, and silver within a massive Proterozoic breccia complex. Today, underground workings operated by BHP descend past 500 meters depth, processing millions of tons of ore annually. Because the entire ore body sat concealed beneath hundreds of meters of barren rock, the discovery confirmed that major structural mineral systems across the continent could remain completely hidden from surface prospecting. Number 7. The young volcanic province across the basalt plains. Across southwestern Victoria and southeastern South Australia lies the newer Volcanics province, covering roughly 15,000 square kilometres. To a driver travelling the Prince's Highway, the terrain appears as gently undulating agricultural pastures dotted with low stony rises. In volcanic terms, this landscape is active. The field contains over 400 individual eruption centres, including basalt shield volcanoes, scoria cones, and explosive maar craters like the Blue Lake at Mount Gambier and Tower Hill near Warrnambool. Isotope dating and sediment cores confirm that volcanic activity at Mount Gambier occurred approximately 5,000 years ago during the mid-Holocene, directly witnessed and recorded in oral histories by the Boandic people. Geoscience surveys indicate that the intraplate mantle plume and regional thermal upwelling beneath the continental lithosphere remain active, making this province the youngest volcanic field on the Australian mainland and an active geological zone beneath established farming districts. Number 6. The drowned landscape of the continental shelf. Off the coast of northwestern Australia, in the Pilbara region, lies the submerged Sahul Shelf. During the last glacial maximum, roughly 20,000 years ago, sea levels were approximately 120 meters lower than today, exposing over 2 million square kilometers of land that connected mainland Australia to New Guinea and Tasmania. In 2020, underwater archaeology research, led by Flinders University in the Dampier Archipelago, identified submerged stone artifacts and grinding stones in 2 meters and 14 meters of water at Cape Bruguières and Flying Foam Passage. Documented across the Murujuga Sea country of the Ngarluma and Yindjibarndi peoples, these underwater sites provided the first direct archaeological confirmation of preserved Aboriginal cultural heritage on the Australian seabed. Number 5. The town removed from official road signs. In the Pilbara region of Western Australia, along the northern escarpment of the Hamersley Range, sits the Gorge of Wittenoom. Between 1938 and 1966, the Australian Blue Asbestos Company mined chrysotolite asbestos from banded iron formations in the canyon walls, milling over 160,000 tonnes of blue asbestos fibre. Millions of tonnes of fibrous tailings were distributed across the township, used as aggregate for roads, gardens and school playgrounds. Following thousands of diagnosed cases of mesothelioma and related lung diseases among former miners and residents, the Western Australian government formally degazetted the town site in 2007. In 2022, State Parliament passed the Wittenoom Closure Act, terminating all remaining private property titles, cutting grid infrastructure, and removing the town from official road signs and highway navigation maps to discourage public access. What happens when the hazard in the earth was placed there not by industrial mining, but by state-sponsored testing programs carried out across thousands of square kilometres of the interior? Number 4. The residual contamination of the atomic testing grounds. In the Great Victoria Desert of Western South Australia, 450 kilometres northwest of Ceduna, sits Maralinga, on the traditional lands of the Maralinga-Tjarutja people. Between 1956 and 1963, the British government conducted 7 major atmospheric nuclear tests here, along with hundreds of minor trials, including the Vixen A and Vixen B experiments. While atmospheric detonations dispersed fission products into upper winds, minor trials burnt and scattered roughly 22 kilograms of toxic plutonium-239 across the desert surface at the Taranaki site. In 1996, the Australian government initiated a $108 million rehabilitation program, exhuming contaminated topsoil and using in situ vitrification, melting trench waste into solid glass blocks beneath the clay. In 2014, the land was formally handed back to the Maralinga-Tjarutja traditional owners. While the township and surrounding road tracks are safe for monitored transit, dedicated core areas around the original ground zeros remain under permanent radiological restriction, holding long-lived transuranic isotopes bound in the arid red soil. Number 3. The Megafaunal graveyard inside dry cave deposits. In the southeast of South Australia, the World Heritage-listed Naracoorte Caves preserve one of the richest fossil deposits on Earth. On the surface, the area is gently rolling calcarenite limestone ridges covered in pasture and stringy bark scrub. Below ground, the caves functioned as natural pitfall traps for 500,000 years. Animals traversing the surface plunged through concealed openings in the limestone roof into deep chambers like the Victoria Fossil Cave. Because the subterranean environment maintained dry, stable conditions with no high-energy water flows, skeletal material accumulated layer upon layer within fine red silt. Excavations led by Rod Wells from Flinders University, beginning in 1969, uncovered thousands of articulated skeletons, including the marsupial lion Phylocoleo carnifex, giant short-faced kangaroos of the genus Simisthenuris, and the massive Diprotodon optatum. These dry silt beds preserve an uninterrupted faunal record tracking 50 glacial-interglacial climate transitions across the Middle and Late Pleistocene. Number 2. The ancient aquaculture system etched into lava flows. In southwestern Victoria, near Lake Condah, lies Budgebim, on the country of the Gunditjmara people. Around 37,000 years ago, the eruption of the Budgebim volcano sent basalt lava flows, known as the Tyrandara flow, spreading south across the landscape toward the Southern Ocean. Over thousands of years, the Gunditjmara engineered this volcanic terrain into one of the oldest recorded aquaculture systems in human history. By systematically modifying vesicular basalt boulders, they constructed a complex network of channels, holding ponds, stone weirs, and fish traps designed to manage water flow and harvest the short-finned eel, Anguilla australis. When the 1919 bushfires and later the 2020 fires burnt away dense scrub across the landscape, high-resolution aerial LiDAR surveys and ground archaeology revealed previously unmapped stone channel systems and house foundations, confirming permanent stone infrastructure built continuously across thousands of years. Number 1. The world's largest closed testing range. In the central interior of South Australia, stretching west from Roxby Downs toward the Western Australian border, lies the Woomera Prohibited Area. Covering 122,000 square kilometers, an area roughly the size of England, it is the largest land-based military testing range in the world. Established in 1947 under a joint British and Australian defence agreement, the range was designated to test long-range ballistic missiles, rockets and target drones, including the Black Knight and Blue Streak programs. Today, operated by the Royal Australian Air Force and the Department of Defence, the range functions as a restricted live-fire aerospace corridor and weapons testing site, while also accommodating orbital re-entry recovery missions such as the Hayabusa asteroid sample capsules. The perimeter is marked only by warning signs and desert vermin fences, yet this arbitrary boundary line has kept an enormous section of the Australian landmass isolated from civilian settlement, road construction and resource development for nearly 8 decades. What kept these anomalies unnoticed for so long was the persistent assumption that because the surface was flat, dry, and sparsely mapped on official charts, the country beneath it had to be empty. Subsurface geophysics, LiDAR scanning, and traditional ecological knowledge continue to reveal that the geological and human history of the continent remains active, complex, and largely unwritten. The map looks finished, but the ground beneath it is not. Which hidden site or geological feature in your own state or territory has always seemed out of place to you? Let us know in the comments below and subscribe to follow the next investigation.